Hey everyone, before we get this video started, I just wanted to let you all know that I am now on a website called Ko-fi, or Ko-fi, but it's coffee, because the whole premise of it is you can just toss somebody a few bucks to buy a coffee. You guys have asked in the past how you can support the channel. This is now a way. I thought it was a nice opt-in way where you just toss a few bucks whenever you feel like, and it goes to me, and it's kind of just like a light thing instead of having to pay for a subscription model or anticipate goods down the line. I'll just always be doing these videos, and if you ever feel like throwing some monetary appreciation my way, you can do it via this website. Ko-fi.com/Zatrancis. Hi, I'm Mike Henry, and this is my Procreate 5 beta demo for the piece I call Here's to Those Kind of Nights. Now, this is a Pink Hair Girls sketch card sketch that I did years ago as one of the rewards for my Kickstarter that I did for that book. I found one of the photos on my phone and thought it would be fun because I liked that it was a really tight crop and it would be cool to just try and do something more with it. You'll see that this said a Procreate 5 beta demo, and that's because this was done in Procreate 5 on the beta. I did this a while back. It was one of the first things I did on the beta, but the unfortunate thing is there's not really much happening here that is going to change the way you think about Procreate, because my process is fairly straightforward and doesn't use a lot of the frills. But I did use Procreate 5 to do this, and there may be some things here or there, like for instance this brush that I'm using for the hair I believe is a Procreate 5 brush. I don't remember what it's called. I'm very ill prepared to talk about this, but I mean that's a joke, but I mean, like, the real gist is that, like, there's nothing here that's particularly taking advantage of Procreate 5. This was me just sort of sitting down with it and getting used to the small UX changes and all that kind of stuff. Now, you'll also notice that this is going by faster than normal. That's because I wanted to do this slightly quickly. I think that you can get all the major points because everything is more or less done in a straightforward, I've watched 100 of Mike's videos kind of way. And I wanted to just get through it and then slow it down for where we talk about something that's maybe a little bit more complex. So right now, actually let's just say that this video is like I've watched a bunch of Mike videos type of video. So if you're new to the channel, this would be a bad one to start with. Anyways, everything here is just following the normal flatting process. The one thing though is that this is an older drawing, so I do make some minor changes to the way the drawing is done so that I can just kind of update aspects of the anatomy that I'd maybe do slightly differently. I wanted this character to have a bit of like an early 2000s, mid 2000s vibe. So she's kind of like, she's like a low-grade scenester, I guess you could say. So what we're going for with the look though was originally I wanted it to be almost like a backstage vibe, like backstage lighting, where it's like everything's a little bit dim, maybe it's orange lit. She's back there, she's either part of the band or meeting a band, or she works at the club, or I don't know, some sort of shit like that. So this file was originally called Backstage. As time went on though, I decided to add her hand, originally doing a gesture, and then I decided, no, let's have her holding like a beer bottle, and she could still be backstage, but really it's more to the point is that she's in just this like dimly orange lit maybe bar or venue, and she's got a beer in her hand, and that's just like the vibe. And so that's why the piece is called Here's to Those Kind of Nights, because we've all been there, at least those of us who are old enough to have ever been there, and we've all been in that kind of an environment, just hanging out, and it's just one of those kind of nights. And so that's the theme of this piece. The reason why I'm talking about that as like a bigger theme is because what you see going on screen right now is all by the books. We're laying down the flats, we're getting everything set up for color, and then we'll come back in when there's something more interesting to talk about. So for now, let's just let this roll. partway through the Ambient Occlusion Shadow Pass. You can see that I gave her a lot of freckles in the flats, and I added a shirt. I don't think there was a shirt in the original because all the pink hair girls, they were just like shoulders up with no clothes. And so now we are really just laying down that base shadow structure so that we can come back in later and do some fancy shit on top of that. Now we are partway through the direct shadow pass. Since, I said it's like either backstage or it's at a bar or a club or a venue of some sort, she's top-down lit. I just thought that would fit that environment the best. And we're just, again, moving through it, doing the normal standard application of everything. So we've got our flats, we've got color variation in the skin, or skin tone variation, I guess you could say, would be a better way to say it. And we are it's really just, we're just doing it. We're just doing it. ambient occlusion layer, shadow layer, rounding layer, highlights. We're getting to the end of the sort of like we have laid the foundation down point of this illustration. And soon we will be getting into the what more can we do now to actually sell the vibe, because as you can see, we've got that background in. The whole image is fairly desaturated, and we need to start doing this kind of stuff. So we've got a little bit of a shadow creeping up from the bottom right up. We've got some light creeping from the top down, and these are all things that are giving us some dynamics and making it feel like she's actually in the environment. Things are flickering on and off like crazy because these are just some like overlays for the light that is in a gradient over the top, and some multiplies or soft lights for the shadows that are creeping up from the bottom. We're trying to establish that there is a lamp up above her. We got those hair shines in. Now we've dimmed everything, but we're going to keep seeing those layers come on and off because we have to come back in now and do more local color stuff. So we're putting some nice purpley eyeshadow on her, again trying to hit a certain era with the vibe. We're also going to eventually come in and get her tattoos back on her that were in the original sketch. Here we're doing the eyeliner, getting those lips to be the more of a shade of like a lipstick or a lip gloss of some sort. And here's the tattoos. We turn the original sketch back on just so that we can see what those tattoos were. I wanted the tattoos to be good enough, but not look like they were like awesome tattoos that everybody would love. More like that they were tattoos that like when she was the right age, she loved them, but she's kind of starting to grow out of them. Like just starting, or at least she will eventually grow out of them. So we're kind of going with a couple of different styles of tattoos. We've got something that's a little American traditional. We've got something that feels like a little bit more generic. We've got, I would assume somewhere on her she's got like a new school piece, and somewhere else she's got like a band tattoo, because the idea is she's just an average girl who has a bunch of tattoos that she got over the years, and that's what most people actually have, is a bunch of stuff that's just sort of been collected. So now we're going in and adding in extra bounces and making sure that we are just treating all of our materials the way we want to. The eyes being a little bit more reflective, the neck picking up some of the bounce light from down below where the light would hit, like let's say her chest, there'd be some skin showing and it would bounce up. Adding little shines, some coloration, that's what you see right there going on, so that we can get that rich color happening. I will say that at this point in the Procreate 5 beta, I felt like there were issues with color management, but at the end it all comes out okay. But I kept saving things out and they would be like way more saturated or way under. It was just kind of weird, but that seems to be gone now. Now for the bottle, you saw I painted it in, I painted it flat, and so I could mirror it, and then I increased its size, brought it over, put her hand on it, the two fingers and the thumb like she's holding a beer bottle, and then you saw me lower the opacity of that beer bottle. Let's slow it down now, just for a little bit here. So we've got two layers of the bottle. We have a lowered opacity one and then a second one that's also lowered on opacity, but right now they're adding up to 100, and we're painting on the label. We're painting on the reflective part of the label. The idea is that it's one of those beer labels where there's like a almost foil reflective trim, and then there's like more of a matte, matte part of the sticker where they would have like the logo and the description of the brewery or whatever. So that's what we're establishing here. Now when you're doing the glass, you have to think about it like it's glass. You can't think about it quite like you think about something else. Like it wouldn't necessarily just get a shadow put on it if it's highly reflective. It wouldn't just have the qualities of, let's say, a rubber ball or a human skin or whatever. So we have to start thinking about it in a completely different way. So I'm mostly thinking about it just as being reflective, and then it's got cast shadows and reflection coming off of, say, like her fingers or other things in the scene. So right now we're focusing just on the sticker part of it, putting a little rip in it right there, folding that corner, and now we're trying to sell the reflective aluminum sort of part of it. Not aluminum, but that foil treatment that's on there, and that's what we're doing for that trim. At this point, she's had a number of her layers flattened so that we could work on the bottle and just kind of be free working on the bottle. So this label part of it is fairly straightforward. You can also see where the bent corner is, like the other side would be sticky, so we're not going to put any shine on that side. It would just be matte. Now we're going back to her fingers, making sure that we get that all rendered the way that we want it to be. Well, I shouldn't say rendered yet. It is rendered, but it's still the flats. It's not, we're not doing a shadow treatment on it yet. And then that was me duplicating the fingernails and making them white and putting them underneath so I could scratch away at the fingernail polish and have her actual fingernails underneath. Now we're erasing away on that top layer of the bottle so that we can get that where the glass, you can see the thickness of the glass coming around. I'm keeping it pretty rough. The piece overall is rough. I wasn't trying to do like a photorealistic bottle, just implying the right thing so that it felt right. We will eventually, then between those two layers, which is what's happening right there, we are painting in the beer. You could see there for a second I was being totally mental and having the beer be like in the same gravity, like in its own gravity, and then I was like, what am I doing? So now here we've got the beer, we're painting it in, we're painting the surface of it, we're painting the little bubbles around it, saturating it up a bit, lowering its opacity, bringing that top layer of the bottle back on, just putting some little bullshit on the label so that it looks like it's a logo and some description of the brewery and all that kind of stuff. Just adding enough details so that it feels like it's complete. It's that thing where you're trying to determine what your level of stylization is, and so she's stylized a certain way, which means some details are exaggerated and some details are reduced. What am I going to do with the bottle as well? So now we're adding the shadow layer, which is done differently for each thing. We've got a little bit of a shadow being cast from the label, but then otherwise there's a gradient. We've got shadows on the fingers, at least there will be. Right now they're just kind of messy. And then we're going to also add a bunch of reflection as well. So see there, now her fingers are getting proper shadowing. The ambient occlusion pass, of course. One of the tricks here is also selling the shadows on the thumb, the part of the hand that's like behind the bottle. Here we're tweaking the colors of that bottle, making it much more dark so that it looks much more like an actual bottle. Even though it sacrifices some of the coolness of the transparency, it ultimately feels more like it would actually feel. Now we're doing the direct light shadow for the fingers, casting it onto the bottle, and putting it also on the fingers themselves. Since this is a very harsh top-down light, we just want to make sure that we're reinforcing that lighting as much as possible. One thing that is interesting about the highlights on this piece, it's a really weird thing. I have this blue highlight, and then I also had an orange highlight because at one point I couldn't decide which way I wanted the lighting to go. And then ultimately I ended up having both, and they're both on, and they're both at reduced opacities, and they're influencing each other. And it's super bizarre, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend it, but it was what I stumbled into, so I just went with it. So you'll see when all the layers get turned back on that highlight is a very strange color ultimately. Yep, there it is right there. So now we're just putting in the last tweaks, getting some coloration on here, turning all those effect lighting things back on, and then at the very end we will also do some color balance tweaks, but we're not quite there yet. We're almost out of the slow part. Here you can see I'm adding the reflections from her face because now that I've got everything turned back on, I can start looking at how that color is going to actually work. I put a little bit of a glow there, like the light is passing through the bottle onto her a little bit, putting the sweat on the bottle, putting some little sweat beads dripping down there. And then I thought that it needed more dynamics in the lighting, so I added this kind of like pinkish light that's coming up from below somewhere. If she's in a bar or if she's at a club, there would probably be some rando lights that are also influencing her, so I thought that that made sense. I could put that in there and it wouldn't feel completely out of place. Of course, it would be much more intense on the bottle because the bottle is more reflective. Here you see me playing with what that actual color is. And now I throw in sort of like a seat back, like in a booth or something at a club or a bar. Putting some shadow down. These shadow layers now are all back on that. They are not part of that top layer because it didn't really matter, but they're all done with the same color. And then we put a little bit of effects and some shine right there on the seat cushion. We make the wall just sort of like dirty and grungy, kind of just textured in some way. Put noise, put some color balance tweaks, and then this right here, what you're seeing is actually something I abandoned, but I decided to cut out the hand and blur it so that it was like too close to the camera, which is what you're seeing me do here, but then I abandoned it. You'll see a blur real quick and then I turn it off right there. And that's the final version of the image. Let's take a look at that original sketch from the Pink Hair Girl sketch card. So that's the way this whole thing started, and then with a little bit of love and care, it turned into this, which is still fun. Not my favorite piece I've done this year, but I still really like it, and she seems like she'd be fun to hang out with. So thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please consider hitting like, hitting subscribe, hitting the bell, doing all the things so that YouTube knows that you like this. And I'll see you on the next video. If you're looking for me on the internet, these are the places where you can find me.